Everybody, this episode is brought to you by Join Cycling, which is the smartest training app for cyclists, whether you're racing or training for a big event or just trying to get stronger on the bike. Unlike rigid training plans, Join adapts to your schedule, fitness level, and goals, so you always get the most effective workout, no matter how life gets in the way. And this is important for Andrew and I because, as Benji points out in this episode, we are signed up to do El Tour de Tucson on November 22nd. We'll be going up against some of the biggest names in professional cycling, like Bradley Wiggins, George Hincapie, perhaps even Quinn Simmons, in a 100-plus mile ride race, and we'll need all the help we can get, and Join is helping us get there. Like today, I've not been training maybe as hard as I should have. I go to my Join app. It has all my training load in it, so it knows what I need to do. It's suggested a 30-minute run. Maybe I want to do something else. All I have to do is click the little wheel, cycling workout, and it gives me a 5 times 4-minute VO2 max workout that I can easily do in the next hour and a half before I have to go to my child's Halloween parade at their school. So I'll get that done. Join makes it easy. Join will give me the workout right on my head unit. I can export it. It will log the workout, log the load, and put it into a formula that will spit out my next workout. So Join, I cannot recommend enough. Join is helping us get ready for El Tour de Tucson. If you want to try it, you can try it for a month free at Join. It's a little bit of an unwieldy URL, join.cc/campaign/beyond-/the Peloton. The link is also in the show notes if you'd rather get it there. All right, let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin, author of the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here, as always, with Andrew Vontz of the Always the Hard Way newsletter and Choose the Hard Way podcast, and we have a special guest today, Benji Naesen of Lanterne Rouge podcast fame and then also YouTube fame. Benji, would you like to plug anything before we get into this hard-hitting interview on your thoughts from the last season and your predictions for 2026?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I'll be honest, plugging something. It's off season, so I'm in winter hibernation, but I am making a couple of Zwift videos this off season. I'm getting on the bike, indoor cycling, try and lose weight, get better on the bike. Pretty good goals. And I'll be uploading that on my Benji Naesen YouTube channel. But that's about it for now. We'll keep it calm when it comes to the plugin.
I definitely know that grind, trying to lose the weight that you've gained from the content grind of the season. Last time we talked, I'm trying to think, you had just moved to the UK. Are you still there? How are you liking it?
I'm still there. I moved to Oxford now. So I was more towards the London area before, now towards Oxford. Everybody I speak to here is like, I'm in this university or I went to this university. Yes, I went to high school and university in Belgium, but compared to Oxford Uni, I feel like I'm dumb compared to everybody running around in Oxford. But outside of that, I'm pretty happy here. I've got Wi-Fi. I can cycle, even though driver culture in the UK is not exactly the best in the world, I would say. But yeah, I can't complain. Can't complain too much. Bit further away from the Belgian classics, though, so that's a downside.
Yeah, but Benji, clearly you are getting ready for the Belgian classics yourself. You mentioned you've been putting in the work on Zwift, and I have to ask, I saw the recent sprint test. Spencer, I feel like there is an existential threat to the Pace Ranch end of ride sprint because Benji was popping off multiple 1,200 watt 5-second sprints. So Benji,
we're gonna have to drop them before we get there. It's the only way. It's the only chance we have.
It sounded like you were experiencing a problem a lot of cyclists experience when indoors, and it sounded like perhaps you were in danger of tipping over. Did I follow that correctly from your content?
It's like I wasn't necessarily in danger of tipping over, but it's that thought of, okay, I'm sprinting indoor to the point that, am I going to tip over? And once that gets in your head, that sprint is ruined. Because for the rest, you're like, I can't push full out for the rest of that sprint because you don't want to fall over. But to be honest, I was a bit disappointed in my 1,200 watt sprint because normally I can actually do 1,300, 1,400. So it was, I'm actually complaining about that sprint.
It's brutal to try to put out those big watts inside. I feel like,
I can't believe you do it.
Yeah.
I can't do them outside because ironically, outside, I'm too fearful of going too fast.
All right.
That's funny. I I know I mean, I'm out of the sprint game these days because you get a couple issues where you pull the pedal out at 1,500 watts, pull the shoe
Yeah.
out of your pedal. It's
Yeah,
pretty
but
freaky, but I cannot
sprinting
sprint
is great.
inside.
Sprinting is great, but the reality is I can't use my sprint if I don't get to the finish. So it's my endurance that needs to get better.
Yeah, if you want to dominate Dolphin City, you need to put in the work. You got to do those VO2 efforts. And then if you're lucky, you make it over that final, what is it, a 25-second kicker. And then you got the long 500 watt grind to get to that sprint finish. Dolphin City, a big favorite here on Beyond the Peloton. We love
That's a
that
good
crit,
workout.
right?
Dolphin City is, woof, that will get you in shape, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got to get you over maybe next year, instead of doing the podcast, the wildly successful podcast you host, you're doing an American crit scene, like full race schedule next year. I don't know.
Belgian
Tulsa,
waffle
tough.
ride or something.
Yeah.
Not a crit, but
Some of these crits are so sketchy. We have a friend, Kip, who actually just had a crash. Best of luck, Kip.
Best
Hope
of
you're doing
luck,
better.
Kip. Shout out to Kip's Corner.
The Samsung phone was injured in the crash, and it's being repaired. So we don't know if he's listening to this.
He's
Because
Flemish for chicken.
Interesting.
Just putting that out there.
Well, Kip, he's not chicken because he went and did probably the sketchiest professional crit in the United States this year. Like, as a man with a job and a family, and did pretty well. But I'm like, you could not pay me money to do that. But Benji, great to have you here. I've got some questions for you. Your 3 favorite things from 2025, your 3 least favorite things from 2025 predictions, and we're going to chop it up about your best friend, Remco Evenepoel. And we're not joking about that. You are actually friends with Remco Evenepoel, but
it's not exaggerated.
What was one of your 3 favorite things from this past year in a racing sense?
I like to go about these questions because you sent me these in advance and then I forgot that I had to prepare for this. So now I'm pretending that I prepared for this by not preparing for this on purpose, by taking these questions in and thinking by myself, okay, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Milan-Sanremo was a really good race, actually, in hindsight. Yeah. Because if we look at the history of the race, back in the day, we had the editions that Oscar Freire won, the one that Hausler got second behind Cavendish, I'm pretty sure, and then Chiolek won one, but those are like editions where it's more of a slightly more passive race, I would say. We've had that change a little bit to the point where sprinters couldn't necessarily survive that easily, except Philipsen then. But now we've come to the point that the Cipressa seems like an actual place where an attack can make it to the finish, because that's exactly what happened this year. Yes, Tadej Pogacar didn't go solo on the Cipressa. That was a bit, well, I would have deemed that impossible before this year's Milano-Sanremo. Now there's like an open door to that possibility. If Mathieu van der Poel is not there and Ghana suffering a bit more maybe on the climb, then you've got Tadej Pogacar riding away on that Cipressa. Whether he stays away then, that's a whole different situation, because a lot of tactical stuff behind the scenes would happen. But just in general, Milano-Sanremo opened up on the Cipressa. Pogacar, Van der Poel, and Ghana rode off into the distance, and we had a fantastic battle until the finish line. And I really enjoyed that. Yes, Mathieu van der Poel won, but it's the first time that I truly believe that Tadej Pogacar has a chance of dropping people on the Cipressa and potentially making it in the future, which I would have never said possible before this year's Milano-Sanremo.
Do you think he'll do it this year?
Well, Mathieu van der Poel still exists, so usually I would say no. But
there could be a golf tournament. We don't know. What if he goes to the Masters?
Run club.
He doesn't show up.
Golf simulator in Dubai with his private jet over back and forth. But
is that true, Benji? Is that true that he flies a private jet to a golf simulator in Dubai? I can't get this out of my head.
I don't know if he flies a private jet to a golf simulator in Dubai. I think there's enough actual golf places in Dubai, I assume.
I was hoping he was at least golfing outside.
Because otherwise he could literally have a golf simulator in his bedroom, most likely. But regardless of that, I think it's true that he flies a private jet, and people have their different opinions on that. I have my opinion on that, but that's not the topic of today's podcast. Unless you want it to be. But I think, where was I? When it comes to MSR, I think the issue with Pogacar is that in MSR, positioning of his teammates has been troublesome over the last 2 years. I think there was 1.5 riders in position in 2025 MSR, and the year before there was maybe 1.5 to 2 riders in position, and you need a little bit more maybe to get the perfect lead out going, or those riders need to be in the perfect position to set up the perfect lead out for that initial separation of Tadej Pogacar versus the other competitors to work out on the Cipressa. So I think his team around him depends a lot. And for example, in the copy we have before Cipressa even arrives, we had Nils Polit having trouble positioning UAE at the front that entire time, because positioning is not necessarily a job that Polit has been excellent at throughout his entire life. And we saw Tim Wellens kind of guiding him to the front every now and then in those copy before the Cipressa. And that is efforts that Wellens is pushing, but that's also moments where Polit is kind of losing it when it comes to the position. And we saw that just before the Cipressa, where UAE was kind of not perfect, I would say. Pogacar was in a good position, but maybe 1.5 other riders were as well. So I think that's the focus of trying to get the perfect team ready for MSR to be in position on the Cipressa, which is easier said than done.
Gotta ask, who's the sleeper cell? Who's the rider we don't see coming that might show up at MSR and disrupt this Matthew Van Der Poel white shoe parade going to the line again?
Well, definitely not Oya Lascano.
Oh boy.
That's a whole other story. But, whoa. So you're looking for a rider that could disrupt the MVDP versus Pogacar battle at Milano-Sanremo.
We're all looking for it. There's got to be someone lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. There always is.
Do you believe that if Remco Evenepoel is in that race that he can follow on the Cipressa? I'm not sure I do.
It sounds like you're asking yourself a question, Benji.
I actually think that's the answer to the question, Andrew. I think it's Remco. Because he's good at high speed, like a high speed getaway.
Yeah.
Right.
Where people maybe think a second too long behind. I don't know. I think he could. I think he's the guy, and they can't catch him.
The man is a bullet downhill as well. So I think off that final descent, you're not going to catch him once he's...
Yeah, because it's also not a 10% climb, the Cipressa.
Yeah.
So as long as he can do what Ghana did on that climb, which Ghana had to push so many watts to do the tempo he was doing on the Cipressa, because he's a heavier rider, obviously. But you'd like to believe that Remco should be able to do what Ghana did there. And if he can, then he's in the wheel,
You have
what
to
happens?
think that if he's able to do that, now that we're talking about it, I actually feel like this is the ultimate Remco psyop, and that if he wants to win the Tour, the first thing he has to do is win MSR, because I think he starts to get in Pog's head if he's able to pull that off.
I don't know. Like, you've hinted at me being in contact with Remco every now and then. The reality is also that Remco gets in Remco's head a lot. And I think that's a bigger issue with Remco at the moment. Like, the fact that in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he drops and the camera motorbike comes to him and he kind of waves it away. He literally stops by the side of the road to make the motorbike ride off to then restart. That is something that he's mentally dealing with in that race that he should try and get over as much as possible, because the mental side of performance is almost just as important as the physical side. And if you're so hurt by not being able to compete on that day, I'm sorry, but that's detrimental,
Right. You have to think if he just cuts loose at a few Amelie Lenz or Charlotte DeWitt raves over the winter, little hard techno, gets it out of his system, I think that he's tranquilo. He owns Pog at MSR, and then we see him ascend to a Tour de France victory.
We're getting to we're too early in this show for Remco winning the Tour. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Benji, something I lay awake thinking about is, let's say, I just think about you in laying there. But let's say Pogacar gets away on the Cipressa. What's Benji doing? Is he enjoying the UK as much as he should? What's funny is we were like not that far away.
Where did he go to university? Yeah.
Yeah, we were not that far away from each other for months of this year. Did not see each other. But so let's say Pogacar gets away on the Cipressa. What happened? Can he realistically stay away? Do they implode behind? Do they get Group 2 syndrome?
There's so many questions about that, because what if Mathieu van der Poel is not with Tadej Pogacar, then he's in the second group, and what if Philipsen is there? Then one of the two will offer himself up for the other, and then you've got an extra team that's going to be trying to get them back. Then Ghana would also not be at the front, so Ineos would also be pacing at the back. And there's all these like extra factors that play in the session between Cipressa and the Poggio, that distance. So the gap that he makes on the Cipressa is vital to decide whether he can keep that gap until the Poggio. Once he's on the Poggio, he on paper should be able to set a pretty solid tempo when it comes to climbing to keep those others relatively on the same gap, or I wouldn't say expanded, because the big group still on paper has the advantage, but if he shreds them on the Cipressa, then there's also that factor. It's not as simple as saying, yeah, he will survive, no, he won't survive. I don't know.
It's funny we're talking about this race because pre-COVID, I would have said it was the worst big race of the year. Like, don't even watch it. It's a waste. Watch the last
Right.
5 minutes. And now I think it's the best.
I had the exact same, well, to be honest, like about 4 years ago, we started a podcast in COVID, LRCP. So one of our first discussions was, what's your favorite monument, Patrick and I? And for him, it was dead set Milano-Sanremo. And I was like, you're insane, Patrick.
That's like, he should be on a watch list or
Like,
something.
he is insane, but he was extra insane for that specific reason. And then over the years, it's come to the point that the other monuments have become so dominated by a single individual. And we see that in Lombardia when it comes to Pogacar. We see that in Paris-Roubaix with Mathieu van der Poel last year especially. This year was a bit of a closer battle until Pogacar crashed, but in my opinion, he would have still been dropped by Mathieu van der Poel regardless. But and at RVV was a really good race, actually, men's RVV. I expected Pogacar to eventually drop Mathieu van der Poel in that parcours, because the parcours inherently fits Pogacar better, but it was still a bit closer than I perhaps expected it to be, so it was a good race. But MSR was the one that maybe had the subversion of expectations, but in a good way, not in like the Game of Thrones season 8, we're gonna try to throw a plot twist at you kind of way, but in a plot twist that is like, ooh, we've got a race from the Cipressa onwards. And therefore, this year, yes, it was the best monument.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like Sanremo's almost made for TV because nothing happens, and then you know when it's going to happen, the action. Sometimes I feel like Flanders and Roubaix, it's like you've woken up from a dream and someone's asking you to write down what happened in the dream. Like, kind of. It's hard to. It can be so confusing. It's gotten easier in recent years because you know exactly when Pogacar's going to attack. But sometimes with Roubaix, like, it's so disorienting. You're like, what is going on here? What happened to so and so? Where are we?
Especially in the years where there's echelons before the cobbles even start, and then there's a group with 40 people ahead, and then by the first cobbles, that whole situation is completely opposite, and so much can happen to the point, like, when we're doing the podcast for Roubaix, I've got like these notes that I make during the race. Without those notes, I think we'd lose it halfway through. We'd completely miss out on every move, and we'd just guess the winner correctly at the end. And even then, you'd be like, oh, who won again?
Filippo Pozzato got second. What the heck? Yeah, sometimes you go back and look at those old results. You're like, how did that play out? But
I rewatched Omloop, I don't know, 2007, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Hushoft won. And Pozzato crashing in the final kilometer. Oh, my goodness. I had you got to watch that edition that Hushoft won. I don't know what Rabobank was doing in the last 40 kilometers. They started chasing their own teammate. I had short circuits in my brain watching that race. Sorry, random thing.
No, we support that. Rewatching of elder races. What's your second favorite thing from this last year?
What is my second favorite thing of this last year? Well, can I jump back and forth to least favorite? Because it's it's not as clear in my head.
Yeah.
Least favorite? This is a topic, Spencer, a topic we'll dive into. I feel like after the passing of Muriel Furrer last year in the World Championships road race, I have not felt like the UCI has done enough, or the sport in general, not just the UCI, to make me feel like the sport has gone with everything they can to make the sport safer since that moment. And it's not just the first time in the world in the sport that this happens. There's been multiple athletes dying over the last couple of years, which is horrifying to happen. but you'd like to hope that something kicks in action. And yes, the UCI is then creating this rider tracking system that they're testing in some races, and then you come up with the Tour de Romandy women's race. And the situation in that race is that the female riders are being asked to, the female teams are being asked to put rider tracking from the UCI on their system. But there's this political background where there's teams within the Velon organization. So there's multiple teams like that have their own tracking system that it's against their commercial interest to use that rider tracking system from the UCI. And then on the opposite end, the UCI isn't really promising to the teams that they won't use that rider tracking for the commercial interest of the UCI. I'm sorry, but is the rider safety not important than both your commercial interests right now? It really frustrates and angers me that there's no... I'm not sure I expected a conclusion yet to a working system, but it's like they're actively not thinking about rider safety and more about politics and money in every single crossroads that they pass. And it hurts me so much.
Yeah, and Benji, I sat down with Jim Akowitz in 2016 to talk about this very issue, Velon's position on data ownership, which I think it's a pretty fundamental issue. You would think that 9 years later, Velon and the UCI would have come to some kind of agreement. And when we talk about this issue of rider tracking, we've all been riding around with a rider tracker in our pockets for more than a decade now on our phones, on our GPS devices. And the fact that they can't figure it out and there's this infighting about basic safety information seems to be ridiculous. And there doesn't seem to be anything on the horizon suggesting we're going to get a resolution, disappointingly.
And it's also just the organizations that exist in this sport. Like the Safer organization is now led by Brent Copeland, which is the Jayco boss, who is probably dealing with a bit of other stuff when it comes to Jayco right now, because we're unsure about their long-term future when it comes to the team. But outside of that Safer organization then brings ideas to make the sport safer to the UCI, and then the UCI finds a solution to that, but then never brings that solution to the actual people that proposed the problem in the first place. So then there's this difference between what the people bringing the problem expect from the solution versus what the UCI is offering, and then they're fighting about these handlebar widths that clearly the UCI forgot female cyclists existed when they brought that out. There's all these tiny things. But Spencer, you were going to say something. Sorry for cutting you off.
I was just going to say, if people don't know what we're talking about, at the World Championships last year, so 2024 World Championships, essentially a rider was lost because they crashed and they were unresponsive, and then they tragically died because no one knew that they crashed. And it sounds ridiculous, but you can lose someone on course. As Andrew said, it blows my mind because we all have Garmin. Everyone has a head unit. I remember like Steven de Jong crashed or something happened to him on a ride and they found him because of his Garmin. You think you could, and oftentimes it will call an emergency contact when you crash. You'd think that you could have that technology in the Peloton.
There's a slight difference between that technology and what the Peloton needs, in the sense that technology is linked with your phone, which has the capabilities of then calling stuff and has those features built in, but it's an all-in-one solution that is needed, but that exists in what Velon has, that exists in what the UCI now has, but they're fighting too much with each other to find a solution together, to the point that there is no solution at the moment. But anyway, sorry for bringing up a pretty depressive topic here for a second.
Well, I guess the cousin of that too is, what is the deal with the non-straight sprint finishes? You'd think that would be a layup. I don't understand that.
No, but
it's like,
Spence, you don't get it. You don't get it, Spencer. Like, if I'm the UCI, why would I fix something that I can fix when I can blame the riders instead? Come on.
That's true. That's the big brain move. It's like, if we straighten out those sprint finishes, they're not going to look as irresponsible as we want them to be. So, any other grievances from the year? Least favorite things?
Well, actually, I'm going to go to a positive one now. I'm jumping back and forth, and I want some takes of yours as well in a bit as well, because I talk shit here a lot, but I'd love to hear your takes as well. But I enjoyed the promotion relegation battle towards the end of this year. Because for the people that don't know, there's a 3-year cycle from 2023 to 2025. And the top 18 teams in terms of UCI points throughout those 3 years stay in the top level division of the Sport World Tour. And if you're not in that, you're kind of doomed. But there's been these plot twists every now and then to the point that it was so much closer than I expected it to be at the end of the year between UNOX and Cofidis. Then those teams were technically not even in the top 18, but then because Lotto and Intermarché are coming together, that allows for UNOX to jump into World Tour, which then has the indirect effect that the Tour de Titema team, the Unibet Titema Rockets, Unibet Rosa Rockets they're called now, looks like they're going to have a Tour de France wildcard in 2026. There's been so many small changes. I don't know about you, Spencer, but I did not expect UNOX to become World Tour in 2026. If you asked me half a year ago,
did not see that coming.
And I did not expect Unibet Rosa Rockets to have a chance for a World Tour wildcard next year already, half a year ago.
I think I said on this podcast like half a year ago, I was like, what's the end game with that team? I mean, realistically, what races are you going to get invited to? Oops, I was wrong. No, both those things blew my mind. I love to see Uno X. I didn't do my homework. I was supposed to get Andrew a copy of this, but did you see they released before the tour? It's like a 30-page document on basically everything they did to prepare for the tour. Like they take it very seriously, and then they kind of put it out there, which to me projects confidence because it's like, well, you can know what we're doing, but you can't copy it because you're not us. And I want to be careful with what I say here, but you get the feeling that maybe some of these long-standing, perhaps French teams don't take it that seriously. So it's awesome to see a team that comes in and is really serious about it, got promoted, got rewarded. Would be hilarious if Jayco isn't around next year and Cofidis is World Tour after all of this.
Would be hilarious, he says.
But I also think that, and maybe, this is maybe not the UCI's job, could have been a little better projected to us. Like you're watching these races at the end of the year and only we know the implication, right? Like I don't think a regular person could understand promotion relegation, but
exactly.
I did think it was a major improvement. It added an entire storyline that wasn't there before.
I think so as well, and it's not just for the promotion relegation system, it's then also which teams in the pro team division, the second division, then have access to World Tour races because they're at the top of that ranking, all these tiny details that you're following, and it adds an extra layer to the importance of maybe smaller races, I would say. There is a bit of an unfairness to the whole competition, I think, because if you think about it, World Tour teams have access to bigger races where more UCI points on paper are available, so they've got a bigger chance to defend their position than the people that are attacking their position. But I guess that's just how the system is built at the moment. I'm not sure how easy it is to fix that. Do you think there's a world where where hypothetically, I'm just blurting out ideas here, so maybe this is completely stupid. Tell me if it is. If pro team promotion was completely dependent on the points in pro team races, and World Tour relegation is completely dependent on World Tour points, but how do you then clash the top level pro teams versus the lower level World Tour teams to decide who switches? That's the issue with the idea, I think.
Yeah, would you have someone like a pro team skipping the Giro to go to, what do you call them, the bingo bongo races or something?
The Belgian ChatGPT races.
Because you want to reward Uno X for showing up, like ponying up to the tour and winning a stage. Like that's pretty metal, folks. So I don't know.
It's difficult.
I'm
not sure it's an issue that needs to be solved, but it's enjoyable to talk about.
I have to ask Benji, because Unibet Rockets came up back in March. I postulated that they would actually be going to the tour in 2026. Woo! This is now coming true. And as you saw, they've laid off a significant number of riders, clearly to open the path to bring in World Tour talent. And as we've seen with the consolidation of a few teams, the labor market is great if you're a buyer. Do you have any kind of insight at this point about who we might see on Unibet Rockets in 2026? You have anything up your sleeve?
Well, I feel like the names that are going to be on Unibet Rockets next year have mostly been announced. Like, that's the the timing of this podcast, I'm afraid, because Groenewegen, Poels, Larsen, Reinders, Kopecky, and Yannis Petro are announced already. I'm not really the guy that likes to leak transfers. So if I would know a transfer, I wouldn't share it. In the same way that I think it's very bad. I saw a newspaper leak the retirement of a rider the other day. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
let that guy announce it themselves. What the hell? Like, that's crazy. But
Yeah,
in
that
this
is pretty
specific
brutal,
idea,
man. I think
there
Wout
are
Poels is going, right?
Yes,
Is
there are
that's
existing
public?
rumors that Rory Townsend is joining. But that's
Ooh.
public, so I'm not leaking this myself.
Okay.
That's enjoyable. But you're right. Wout Poels, Groenewegen, those are the big World Tour names that are joining. But I'm pretty hyped about Matthias Kopecky, Czech rider from Novo Nordisk. Bit of a versatile cobbly sprinter. Weird thing to say because he's never really been at those top-level World Tour races yet. But that's what I'm seeing in him, like Belgian ChatGPT 1.1 Cobble Classics races like Le Samyn, etc. He can do okay in those races for this team, and it's not a World Tour team yet. So regardless of the fact that they have the wildcard next year, UCI points are still relevant to get for them, and that's a rider that can really get them for them. But of course, I think you will both agree that Wout Poels is their closest chance. Do we agree? Out of Wout Poels and Dylan Groenewegen, I think Poels is their biggest chance of winning a Grand Tour stage, not Groenewegen.
Well, if we just think about this mathematically, though, think of all the bites of the apple Groenewegen gets. And I was at a tour stage, which felt like yesterday that Groenewegen won. So what was that, 2024? So he can do it. The thing I worry about Poels is, and I do think this is a disease in the sport, it's teams, people, riders like, I'm just gonna go win a stage. And it's like, well, okay, what has to unfold for this to happen? You have to have because he's not going to win from the GC group on a mountain day.
Of course not.
He's probably not going to win a sprint stage. So it has to be a mountain stage where he's in the breakaway and he's the best climber in the breakaway. He did it, in 2023? Remember where he stayed ahead of
Wout?
Van Aert? So it's possible. I do think people like Wout Poels have far fewer chances at winning than someone like Dylan Groenewegen. That would be the only reason I would pick Groenewegen.
That's true. But I just think Groenewegen doesn't have it against top-level sprinters at the moment. Especially if Milan, Merlier, and Philipsen all three show up. If it's one of them show up, then maybe there's an off chance that someone else wins. But anyway.
Philipsen's freakishly good at winning Grand Tour stages.
Yeah,
As a society, we've not come to terms with that.
You have to wonder if Groenewegen is there to take Lucas Kubish to the next level, though. So I wonder if that's part of the strategy. Or to become a lead-out man, potentially.
Question.
I don't think that works.
How valuable? Wait, I'll twist it differently. Has the value of experience within the peloton decreased a little bit with how much the sport has changed over the last couple of 5 years?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's almost torched the value of experience. I think experience is completely overrated.
Except in classics, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain point, it does matter. I mean, I'm trying to think of people we're all good friends with, like Remco Evenepoel. Perhaps there's been a point or two where someone should say, maybe do this and not that. Think of Van der Poel, made a lot of mistakes, and then clearly somebody retooled the way he races, and now he's a very, very smart racer. In that respect, yes, experience can help. Having a road captain can help, but the high-octane racing now, don't you think? Think about the World Championships. Pogacar goes, who's on his wheel? It's the young guns. It's Juan Ayuso, Isaac Del Toro. It's not, you don't have Wout Poels up there on his wheel. You know, I do think the high-octane racing it's almost simplified the sport to a certain extent. Even the classics, even our beloved Tour of Flanders is now a little formula-y. You kind of know what's going to happen. It used to be more tricky, I feel like.
What about when it comes to sprinting, though?
Yeah.
Lead-outs,
right?
Yeah.
Like with lead-outs, I think that pattern recognition is still highly valuable. So I think that is the one area where having a lot of experience and being able to read the race. And when we think about the world's best lead-out man right now, Mathieu van der Poel, I mean, he has the engine, and also I think his pattern recognition is superior to his competitors, and that's a very significant edge. The engine, though, is really the,
Well, who do
the
we?
big edge.
Yeah, that helps. Who do we think the best lead out team is right now? Alpecin?
I would say yes, but he said Match Van der Poel being the best leader. I don't even know who I would name as the second best right now. Because Jonathan Milan wins a bunch of sprints, and yes, Consonni is an okay leader, but I'm also not shouting Consonni's name off the top of rooftops when I think of the ultimate lead out right now. And when I think of for example, of Bert van Lerberg at for Merlier at Quickstep, I'm not sure I feel that either, because he's kind of the pilot lead out. He's kind of the one-man lead out that tries to bring Merlier to a competitive position, but there's also many races where he's not in a competitive position to begin with, and that's the ones that he loses. So I'd have to think about who the second best lead out is at the moment, to be honest. And Alpecin is the one where you're like, okay, most of the time, well, we've got this joke on our podcast where Alpecin de Koning, every time you have, like, for example, Johnny Vermeer is leaving the team to Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe next year, for example. That's a very valuable rider for Roubaix, for the classics. That is gone. But Alpecin has this special way of, just like in the Lord of the Rings, in the Fellowship of the Ring. Don't know how much you two are into the
I know
Lord
exactly
of the Rings.
where you're going with this.
In Isengard, Saruman's fort, they end up digging a bunch of orcs out of mud in the movies. Apparently the books are a very different story, so I don't want to attack the book people, but in the movies, they get a bunch of orcs out of the mud who then are soldiers for their army. I feel like Alpecin just finds a way to get these random Belgian riders out of the mud that suddenly are very good at riding Paris-Roubaix, and suddenly are in the last 30 people at Paris-Roubaix doing lead-outs on the cobbles, and suddenly can do a lead-out in the last five men for their team. And
they make $20,000 a year. It's like such a competitive advantage. I actually was just going to bring that up, that Alpecin would, because I'm looking at their 2025 roster, a lot of old guys, a lot of gray hairs out there. I see 32, 33, 35 years old, and they're letting a lot of those guys go. Yeah. The biggest trick they played, by the way, amazing. It's like, oh, De Koning's not coming back. We can't afford you. Sorry. And they ejected all these expensive riders. And it's like, actually, psych, they're coming back. And now we have a bunch of minimum wage 22-year-old Belgians, who just seem to be able to slot in and do whatever they ask of them. I do think experience is important. Alpecin would be the example. And I am interested to see how they kind of transition in 2026 without a lot of that experience.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But also there's like youngsters that are also very valuable on their team. Like Del Grosso is an obvious one, but Senaramain is a Dutch guy that comes from their DEF team now. I think he was on a different team before that. Am I inventing that? He also comes from the Akroch Tormans team, where every Belgian and Dutch talent on planet Earth apparently comes from. But that's also a rider to watch, I would say. A young Dutch talent.
Would we call Caden Groves a lead out? Was he must have been acting as a lead out rider at some point in the tour, and then he was like, I'm just going to win my own stage from a breakaway.
Well, until Philipsen crashed out on stage
3, 2?
I think 3, because Groves got 7 on stage 3, so I assume that's where Philipsen dipped out.
But to me, that's an interesting. I think Alpecin's always out of the curve. I think bringing Van der Poel, Groves, Philipsen to the tour, basically bringing 3 fast guys, that's the future. Like, bring them all. Bring Milan and Pedersen. What are we doing? Why are we splitting people between races?
I'm telling you. I don't know if you remember this, but Garmin, back in the day, 2010 maybe, 2011, in their blue jerseys with the little diamond-shaped thingies on their chests, with Thor Hushoft leading out Tyler Farrer, Pedersen and Milan, I want to see the exact same thing happen. Imagine Pedersen leading out Jonathan Milan.
Yeah, I agree. That's a deep pull, Benji. I think there was also, it's funny the things you learn about those teams in retrospect. Like, I think Hushoft, they stiffed him on his Worlds bonus. Remember, he won Worlds on Cervelo test team, and I don't think they could pay the bonus. And then that was one of the reasons they had this awkward last second merger with what EF used to be, and then it
Yeah.
like never quite fit together that well. But I think the team went bankrupt because Hushoff won the world championships.
Well, Spencer, they actually tried to pay that bonus in Chipotle burritos.
I would have taken it.
I would have taken it too. I mean, yeah, they're
I have
not cheap
never
these days.
eaten a Chipotle burrito. Does that exist in the UK?
No, I don't think so.
The time has passed too. It's been shitified. It's no longer good.
The stock is down now because people have realized it's just not what it used to be.
Yeah.
And there are local options most places, and you should.
We passed peak Chipotle, unfortunately. Chipotle, RIP. Yeah.
A moment of silence for Chipotle. Garmin. And you remember Phil Liggett would always be like, Garmin Chipotle. It's every time I hear Chipotle, that's what I think of now.
Yeah, Spencer, I don't want us to skate past this. I want to go back to Unibet Rockets for one moment. Part of what is genius about this team, it's their content engine and what they're doing from a marketing point of view. That's the true genius of the team. I was watching, I don't know the name of the writer, unfortunately, was watching one of those throwing what I eat on a race day videos where you discover that white bread, jam, and pasta with hotel buffet red sauce could actually help you win a world tour stage. And I was disturbed to see that the Rockets now have merch where it's Rockets on the front. On the back, it says, Houston, we have a problem. And I'm not sure that this is translating very well across cultures. I'm not sure that's the catchphrase you want on the back of your Rockets sweatshirt. So I'm starting to wonder, are they going out of orbit over there at the Rockets? Something to think about.
I agree with you that their social media work is very important. I would also like to highlight the EF vlogs on YouTube, their race TV, because I have not been as invested in rider personalities as seeing riders like Sean Quinn. To be honest, Sean Quinn was just a guy on EF that on a mountaintop finish had a bit of a sprint back in the day, and then he became a bit of a breakaway rider over the year. I couldn't even tell you how he doesn't perfectly fit in like one mold of type of rider, I would say, but I like him as a guy in those race TV videos. That's what I'm liking for right now. So it matters a lot. People love personality of riders, and that is why it's sometimes a bit of a shame that we hammer so hard on when a rider says something ridiculous. Like, I'm thinking back to the Giro in, 2018, 29, I don't care which year it was, where Simon Yates arrived on the doorstep and said, if I was my competition, I'd be shitting myself before the race started.
Yes, I remember that.
Even I was critical to that, and in hindsight, I'm an idiot for being critical to that. That's the thing we need in this sport.
Yeah, Quinn Simmons leaning into that now. I mean, he said, hey, we need some personality.
Yeah.
And Quinn Simmons, he's, if this were pro wrestling, he's a bit of a heel. He's a Ric Flair type character.
Was Simon Yates unstuck in time, Benji? Did he think it was the day before stage 20 of the 2025 Giro d'Italia when he said that? He was early on his take, like Michael Burry in the housing market. You guys have pushed me. Also, Sean Quinn, I don't want to dox the guy, but he's a very good rider. I think we underestimate how good he is. To be fast like that and to be able to get into breakaways like he does is hard. Interesting altitude training technique. We hear about the sacrifice of the altitude camp. Sean Quinn just rolls up to a major American metro area and lives in the middle of a city, but it's at a high altitude like a European ski resort would be.
Oh, okay.
And
I thought you were going to say that he goes into the metro, but I think that's the opposite of altitude, my friend.
And it's an interesting way to do an altitude camp because you're not having the solitude of a ski resort, which as someone who lived at a ski resort for 3 weeks last year, it can get a little monotonous. But that is an interesting way to do an altitude camp. You're in a city, but you're just very high up like you would be at a ski resort. Good idea.
That's a good idea.
And you guys have pushed me forward to my big question that I want both of you to answer.
Oh, no.
Who is the best American cyclist right now?
I've already answered this offline, so Spencer knows, so I'll go second.
Give me a second to think here. So We've got a bunch of them. We've got Simmons, McNulty, Paulus. We've got Riccitello. We can't forget. Was very good at the Vuelta.
Riccitello.
I wouldn't say Lamperti hits that note right now. I'll be honest about
If
that.
you picked Lamperti, I would respect the take. That would be.
Sepp Kuss at the Vuelta was pretty good, but I wouldn't say so right now, as in terms of like best American rider. Let me take a look at the women's riders as well. We had Chloe Dygert, obviously, but I wouldn't say best. I would say right now, Brandon McNulty.
Whoa.
Jorgensen? Do you disagree?
Well, Jorgensen would be, I guess, the obvious pick. I'm trying to see if we sort by nation who has the most UCI points. I would say Quinn Simmons, right? Because he's early breakaway at a monument, gets fourth, and then it seems like every time Pogacar attacks, he's the only one who tries to stay with him. McNulty does win a lot, though. Like, I'm
not sure I agree with myself, actually. Because, like, McNulty's second half of the season is recency bias, perhaps, but Jorgensen was the man that was there every time in the classics for Visma. So that's something that I'm underrating, I think.
And, yeah, I mean, to be there, to be your classics, didn't he win Dwars when Wout crashed? And he just wins that race?
Won. Well, last year, yes.
And then he's also their second option at the Tour de France.
Another favorite thing this season, Paulus beating 3 Visma riders at Dwars door Vlaanderen.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
that was great.
That was great.
That was amazing.
I got into Paulus, I feel like I got into a debate with a former, a very good rider who was like, oh, he's performing as his engine allows. But I think people forget when he was a teenager, he was a superstar. Like, next Tour de France winner, Jorgensen was racing against me. And then it's like been wild to watch how Jorgensen is now, I would say, the more accomplished rider, but I'm still like, I think Paulus gets on a different team. Get him on Visma, which he used to be on and didn't like. He could be really good.
Yeah. I feel like there are 2 ways to look at this question of who the best American rider is. One is if we just take a look at results, of course. So who's demonstrated the highest value out of all Americans in the Peloton? And I think in that regard, Jorgensen and McNulty, it's a bit of a coin toss. Another way to look at the question, though, is who has the potential to go to the absolute highest level. And when I think about it that way, this is speculative, of course. The future is an imaginary place. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's a bit easier to place a big bet. But Riccitello just looking like Iceman at the end of the season. And I mean, there's this question of, is he on the right team in 26 to actually unlock that potential? I'm not sure that he is, but I really liked how he rode at the Vuelta.
Yeah.
I thought it was impressive, and he could be what's next.
And he found out like 2 days before that he was doing that race. So when Juan Ayuso says, oh, I wasn't prepared because I didn't know I was coming, it was like, well, Riccitello got a call 24 hours ago. I think, Andrew, his dad, you were at the Mac store and his dad came over and talked to us, and you missed him.
Poorly timed Mac failure. My favorite part of the Pace Ranch trip.
I feel like I'm responsible for that success at the Vuelta somehow because of that conversation. But I think it's not even close, and you guys are racist for not thinking this. You're racist to think it's mountain biking because I think it's Christopher Blevins. I mean, first American to win the World Cup since John Tomac. The guy is unbelievable.
Mountain biking is glorified cyclocross, my friend.
Ooh, all right.
Cyclocross is pretty good riders in cyclocross.
Now, on a serious note, I've maybe heard of this guy called Blevins twice in my life before you just mentioned his name. So that's how much I am tapped into road cycling and not tapped into anything else.
Something's got to give when you're as tapped into road cycling as been. It is
the UCI is apparently going to give out points to.
I was going to ask.
We got to talk about that. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I found out about this from you on your podcast, but the UCI, and it's really, if you dig into it, it's more minimal than you think it is. But at some point in the future, they will start awarding UCI points to road teams and riders who compete in gravel and mountain bike events. I think you or Patrick pointed out that Oh, it's funny that they own the events and they probably want to promote those. Those are the races that they own and promote.
Yeah.
It won't be as impactful, I think, as we first thought, because you have to be like in the top 20 of your road teams. You can't just hire Keegan Swenson and have him win Leadville and you get a bunch of points. He has to be in the top 20 of your road team's point total. But as you pointed out, Benji, on your show, it is a different sport. I kind of like it, but at the same time, because let's say Tom Pidcock rolls up to a mountain bike World Cup in the middle of the road season, wins it. Like, that's pretty impressive. And I do think it's nice to reward that from a points point of view.
Why do you have a mountain bike ranking then? If you're all going to shove the points in the road cycling ranking anyway? And why do their own cycling points then not count for the mountain bike ranking?
That's a good point. And I think the answer just comes back to the fact that the UCI wants the best riders at the races that they're the owner of. But it is.
I think that there's a gridding question as well, because there is this issue of a commutative property of points. I also think what they're trying to engineer here is the reverse Viking, which is when Matthew Van Der Poel or Tom Pidcock show up at a mountain bike World Cup, they don't want to have to automatically put them in 50th or 60th position on the grid. They want them on the front row so they can win the race. I think that's what's actually going on.
Yeah, but I'm stupid about this. I don't know how that roster system worked, but is that then not dependent on the points in mountain bike instead of the points in road cycling?
Well, I think we need some clarification here, because if you could just take your World Tour points and show up at the Mountain Bike World Cup and be gridded based on your World Tour results, then you're going to get Van Der Poel in front, and same thing with Pidcock. And I think they want them to not have to do the fox chase thing that they do when they show up and then work their way up on the grid to get to the point where they can win. Although we have seen Pidcock start basically dead last and then win the race. I don't know if we're ready to go there yet. That's not what we're seeing at Gravelburn, where Tom Pidcock is just riding around on his bike in South Africa right now. But that's been kind of interesting.
I hate to puncture your belief, Andrew, that he's giving it his all, but I think Tom Pidcock probably took a free vacation to South Africa.
I know. He said, hey, I'm not here to race. I just wanted to... He said, I'm just a normal guy that drives a UTV up a mountain 100 miles an hour.
You don't believe that the local lap around Bloemfontein is the peak of the season for Pidcock?
It does show you that I don't think the layperson understands that these guys have to train so much now. Like UAE's having their preseason training camp right now. Like the season just ended. Can you imagine the mental toll that would take? It's unbelievable. Before this podcast happened, I was visited by multiple of Benji's representatives, his agent, manager, attorney, and they made me promise not to bring gravel up on this podcast, which brings me to my next question, Benji. Why do you hate gravel? As a fellow gravel hater.
Gravel. I just have vivid memories of our last podcast together when you guys started yapping for 20 minutes about gravel, and I was like, I have no clue what these two people are talking about. I know gravel happens on usually a gravel bike, on gravel terrain, and it's more of a selective race, I would say, and I would say that there's more people at the start line and it's more individual based, and they often have individual sponsors as well, is my assumption. But I've never watched a gravel race. I've ridden on gravel twice in my life, and I've got a gravel bike, that's on me. But thirdly, I think it's just because I watch so much road cycling that I don't have the bandwidth to take in another. For me, that's a different sport. Is that weird to say? I know it's cycling.
No, it's different. The racing's really different. Did you not watch Gravel Worlds?
I watched the last 5 kilometers of the women's race because that was absolutely mental. But
yeah,
beautiful.
I
was gonna say, if you say gravel's not a team sport, the end of the women's race of Worlds was almost an anti-team sport, is how I would characterize it.
I don't understand. Oh, wait. Let's talk about the spirit of gravel for a second.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Oh, boy. Oh, no. I got to call the kids' school. They're not going to make it.
So, we've got these UCI gravel races. I see a lot more actual asphalt and gravel in those races that the UCI puts on, to be honest. And if I compare the national team-based UCI World Championships gravel, then that does not feel remotely like what I think an actual gravel race in the US feels like. When I think of a gravel race, I think about Unbound. For me, the UCI World Championship gravel is a Mickey Mouse race compared to that.
Yeah, it's different, I guess. I mean, Unbound, I feel like Unbound is it's more like a marathon. You know, it's like you do it to finish it or to almost win it, like Andrew, but it's not compelling TV because it is so selective, as you said. It's like, well, what have I learned here? That Cam Jones is a massive engine and he got away with a former World Tour rider and they just worked everybody over. But I kind of prefer, at least from a viewing perspective, the UCI Gravel World Championships where you have mixed terrain. And that, I mean, when I ride almost exclusively on my gravel bike. I almost never take my road bike out anymore. I'm always on mixed terrain going between road and gravel. I thought that I would go to the Limburg region to ride because of that race. I didn't know Colinago had a gravel bike until that. It looks pretty good. I'm more likely to buy it because I know it exists. That's probably a success.
Yeah.
It's frankly, Benji, what the sport's probably about, trying to get people to buy gravel bikes. But yeah, the US gravel stuff, it is different. It's unique. To me, it's almost over the top hard to the point where it's not compelling to watch. That does not stop Andrew he's up early watching the Instagram live stream of BWR Arizona.
Well, sprint gravel is what's next. And Benji, I don't know if this is caught on over there in the UK yet, but as we saw at Big Sugar, which was the last Lifetime Grand Prix event of the year, that's the big series here in the United States. Due to weather, because Spencer and I are both from the Midwest, and one of the key features of the Midwest is tornadoes. So they had to cut the race in half. It was 55 miles. And I think the big problem, and I think this is where people get it a bit twisted. I'm not sure that gravel as it is raced in Europe is actually that different than the United States version. It's just as Spencer pointed out, I think the coverage of the world championships in particular is so superior to what we get in the US, which is Instagram stories and a couple of people with phones out on an ATV driving next to the riders, giving them a big draft.
To me, this feels a lot like the US had this gravel sport that everybody was into, and the UCI decided to bring it to Europe mostly and organize races there that are now a more attractive TV product. But I don't know, does every sport need to be the kind of product where you watch it on TV for like half an hour and you're like, oh, I had actually the entire time? Or can it be a story-based sport, like a documentary from that rider in that race or that rider there? Because does the ambition of growing the sport as big as possible sometimes hinder the beauty of the sport?
Probably. People would probably say, it's funny you just described mountain biking. It was an American sport that was taken to Europe and then optimized for TV, and Americans are still upset about it. There's people I know that be like, those are World Cup guys. They don't know they can't ride tough trails. They don't know what they're doing. I would drop them on a downhill. It's like, those courses are pretty tough. They probably could drop you, but it was taken away and then turned into something that's optimized for TV. I think it's a pretty good TV product, actually. But yeah, I mean, what's funny is you're almost describing golf. It's a boring, long-ass sport that the stories inside are actually what's interesting. It reminds me of the South Park where everyone gets into they think they're getting into pro wrestling, but they get into they're just all like theater nerds. Have you seen this episode, Andrew?
I can't believe that I haven't seen this one.
Oh, it's one of my favorite ones. Okay. It might have been scrubbed by the WWE, but yeah, I mean, that is essentially what gravel is. It's just the stories outside of the racing. Another question for you, Benji, before we have to take off. So I was watching a Visma documentary, and your co-host on your podcast, Patrick Bro, was like giving them a pump-up speech at the training camp. And this was a big, I was on the set for the move during the tour, and this was a
Yeah.
big point of debate where people who have raced can't believe that someone who hasn't raced at a high level is like very, very involved with the team. It's funny this is an issue with cycling because I feel like in other sports, like Eric Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the NBA, and he never played at the NBA level. You see in soccer all the time, football, a lot of these, maybe not a manager. I mean, Chelsea did have a manager that didn't play professional football, but a lot of these teams have advisors that are just pure analytics people. They are not former players. It's funny that cycling is still having this debate. But let's say Patrick hires you. You guys are running Visma for 2026. What's
No,
your
thank you.
strategy? What's your strategy at the
reject it.
Tour de France? And you're still doing the podcast like from
Nah.
the team car every day. What's
Just-
the strategy to beat Pogacar?
Well, step one is I would reject it. That's the first reality, because I left Visma for a reason. I didn't enjoy that as much as I enjoy the YouTube videos that I made. So that's step one. But step two, if hypothetically I end up in a cycling team and the goal is to beat Tadej Pogacar, then first of all, you gotta be realistic. I think a lot of teams are not necessarily accepting the situation they're in. And I'll give an example, for example. World Championships Rwanda. Belgian national team. It's been a while, the race, so I have to think very, very well what happened in the race. But what basically happens in the race is Belgium puts Florian Vermeersch, I think, at the front of the group and tries to make the race hard to try and hurt Slovenian domestiques before the Mount Kigali climb, where everybody expects Tadej Pogacar to attack. That is the perception of what's happening there. So what you're doing is you're riding Tadej Pogacar, making the race hard for him to the moment where he's going to attack. What have you just achieved? Nothing. You've just achieved nothing. So the reality of the situation is that you got to try anything to try and put pressure on both Pogacar and the team of Slovenia in that race then. Because it's easier, quote unquote, easier to beat Pogacar in the World Championships than in a Lombardia, for example. Because in the World Championships, he's got the Slovenian team around him. In Lombardia, he's got a stacked UAE Team Emirates team around him that can control anything. So it's all about creating a chaotic situation where Slovenia is emptied out and Pogacar gets into a difficult situation, ideally even before the Mount Kigali is there, which sounds crazy because it's halfway the race. But the reality of the situation is you know that if you go to the foot of the climb and Pogacar attacks, that you've most likely lost the race. The opposite side of the coin is, you could ride very passively and hope that you have the energy to stay within reach of Pogacar and then try and crawl back after the Mount Kigali. But time and time again, Pogacar has proven that he just rides off. Outside of maybe one of my other favorite parts of the season, Amstel Gold Race, which was a really good race because we had Pogacar go off and then the plot twist that he actually gets caught by Remco and Skelmose winning. But that's the exception to the rule. The default is Pogacar stays away. So to try nothing before the Mount Kigali outside of just pacing in the group is to me a strategy that doesn't realize that Remco Evenepoel is worse than Tadej Pogacar on Mount Kigali and will get dropped.
How about the next week where they isolated him and then they rode for him at Europeans? What was that? That was something. I still keep going back to stage 18. I got in an on-air fight with George Hincapie about it. I replay it every day in my head. Stage 18 of the Tour, Col de la Loze coming up. Jorgensen's off the front. I still can't believe this. So then riders are trying to bridge up to Jorgensen, and Jonas Vingegaard is snap closing them as though he's the domestique for Jorgensen. Just like, so what? Like, I like
We're talking
Wiesma's
in the valley?
In the valley. And I like Wiesma's strategy, like through the first 10 days of just like max chaos. Like, it almost worked. Pogacar almost crashed out of that race. But just that, we're like, whoa, like, what is going on? That's a lot of energy. Why are you using that? Why are you worried about people bridging up to Jorgensen? And it's just this point where I feel like, what happened to Wiesma there? Like, did they short circuit? What's going on? Had they given up by that point?
I'll be honest, it's a while since I've seen that race, but if I think through what happened during that race, then they had a rider up the road before Madeleine. I think Jorgensen might have been the one up the road. Am I inventing that on the
I know.
Madeleine?
I think that's right. Oh man,
I think so.
I don't know.
And
I think so.
maybe with one more rider as well, maybe Kampenaerts, just off the top of my head. And then on the Madeleine, Vingegaard maybe attacked twice to get to Jorgensen to try and maybe simulate what happened on the Col de Tourmalet Cauterets stage at the Tour de France. But the downside is at the Cauterets stage, Pogacar won. But in this case, it's the reality of the situation is the Madeleine is the place to be for them if they want to drop Pogacar on this race. The Col de la Loze at the finish line is a climb that, to be honest, I'm looking at that climb and I'm seeing relatively calm gradients for the first 20 kilometers. It's a very long climb, that Col de la Loze in that stage 18.
Well, and
But
I
the
think
last
this
part is the
was
hardest.
the easy side.
Yeah.
I hesitate to
Yeah.
even use that word with Col de la Loze, but
I'd
I think
have
it was
trouble with
an
it.
easier size. Yeah, I
But
think
for
we would
the-
all say that was pretty hard if we did it today.
Yeah. But the first 70% of the climb, gradients-wise, is unideal to make that devastating attack. Now, we get over the top of the Madeleine. Obviously, Tadej Pogacar can follow our man Jonas Vingegaard over the top, so that doesn't really work out. Then the question is, what do you do? Do you continue through the valley? Do you just continue pacing, etc.? Something like that. I think at the end of the day, regardless of the choice they made, Pogacar was never going to get dropped by Jonas Vingegaard on that day because Jonas wasn't good enough to drop him. I think
You could
that's the
probably, I guess,
reality.
just copy paste that for the whole tour in retrospect.
Yeah, you can copy paste that,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of criticism on Visma Lease strategy of like spending so much energy, being so offensive, so aggressive throughout this entire Tour de France. And there were moments where I was like, ooh, that's maybe not the moment I would have tried it, or I would have maybe tried it a little bit differently. But the general consensus thought process that I think Visma was having is, if we try nearly every day, and Pogacar has that one day like in 2024 on the Puy-Marie stage, Puy de Dôme, no, Puy-Marie stage, the one with the two
Yeah.
climbs and that Vingegaard beat Pogacar in the
Yeah,
sprint, where he's a little bit
Puy-Marie,
worse.
I believe. Yeah.
That's the day they're looking for, where maybe Pogacar has one day that he cracks a little bit or has bad, like the gravel stage at the Giro in 2024. That's, in my opinion, a stage in the Giro that he dominated, where he didn't look as good as the rest of that Grand Tour. So Pogacar sometimes has a day in a Grand Tour where he's not at his absolute best, which is logical. We saw that even in the last week of this Tour de France, but Vingegaard was not better. But so just trying to keep on hammering. Yes, it's at the cost of your own energy, but you're hoping that your man can hold it out longer than the opposing man, which is Pogacar. But at the end of the day, Pogacar is just better at the moment at everything. So as the reality of the situation. So you're saying, oh, how would you beat Tadej Pogacar? It's not a simple. If I knew the answer, then I'd be racking in millions right now. But
I think Tobias Holland Johansson had the answer, right? Just go right across his wheel. Boom. Sprint finish. You actually said something in there that reminded me of a question I didn't ask you. So you mentioned it. Pogacar was beaten by very few riders this year. Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, and Mateusz Schelmoze at Amstel Gold.
Yeah.
Schelmoze, not a happy camper because his team signed Wana Yuso. Apparently had a herniated disc and the team sent him to Tour of Guangxi. I still don't understand that.
Really?
Is he go? Yeah.
I didn't know about hurting at a disc. That's crazy.
And that's why he dropped out after a few
That's
stages.
unethical.
Did you? I have to think there was miscommunication there. I don't think they did that on purpose. But do you think he's going to Uno X?
I don't know. It feels like he's not staying at Little Trek
I
after
know it
2026. That's for sure.
It's like he's not going to stick around.
And to me, when I look at the situation of Uno X themselves, they're in a situation where they're now 3 years in World Tour, but they are limited by the fact that they only sign Norwegian, Danish riders. And that's a limit. There's only an X amount of riders within that pool compared to the big pool that other teams can sign from. So they have a limit on the riders they can sign. If Schelmoze comes on the market, then pick him up. There's a couple of teams that won't sign Schelmoze because of his doping history. I don't know whether UnoX is on that list of those teams that would consider that. But if you're UNOX and you see that Scale Moser shows up on the market and you only want to sign Norwegian and Danish riders, then you don't have much choice, do you?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, and that think of what that does to their market rate. Like Scamoza to Uno X is
Yeah.
worth more than he is to any other team because they need him. But do you guys know do you know which country has the world's largest sovereign wealth fund?
Norway.
It's Norway.
Really?
Everyone has their panties in an uproar about UAE. Norway, I mean, they can splash the cash. I don't know if
Yeah,
the
but-
cash is going to be an issue.
Not sure the country's paying for it, right?
Well, they have this kind of
It's 7-Eleven, I
they
believe.
have like a unique model of capitalism where the state buys large stakes in these big companies and then they
Okay.
distribute profits
and
to the
then
people.
everyone gets healthcare as well.
I don't know if Uno X is one of those countries, but I think there's probably a phone call that could
Yeah,
be
but
made if they
I'm
need a
not
bridge.
sure. I'm not sure the reason that people are hitting at the UAE is related to the money as much to the country itself.
Well, it's Norway.
But
I mean,
that's
think of
maybe a
everything
topic that
Norway's
I'm not
doing.
sure you want to dive into.
They're so annoying. They're so tall and like handsome. Come on, we can't have that.
Hey,
Can't
guys,
make
let's
us all
get back.
look bad.
Let's get back on topic here. Benji, before you go, I think we've covered a lot of world tour related topics. I wanted to circle back to your training. And I think something a lot of people are wondering is as you continue to pursue excellence on the bike
Excellent.
related to Uno X, are we going to see you get into heat training?
Well,
Don't
it depends
do it.
on where I cycle. If I go to a place where it's hot, then technically I'm heat training, but I won't go on the bike and put one of those suits on that is like, unless it's for like an experimental video, then I think it's like worth to give it a try. But yes, I've gotten into riding myself 3 years ago and I've lost weight doing so, maybe 20 kilos in total, although the last half year I've stagnated a bit, I won't lie. I've gotten better on the bike though, so that counters that in my opinion. But I'm still a beginner cyclist. That's how I feel. I'm still, in my opinion, overweight. I'm still over 100 kgs. I want to get under that by the end of next year. So I've got these challenges that are still ahead of me. I don't need to do heat training to do that. I need to ride more on my bike to do that. Volume, it's where it's at. And sports have become a habit in my life now, which that's a great achievement so far. But I've still got moments like from the Tour to the Vuelta where I sometimes prioritize content creation over doing that ride that I had planned in that day. And I think the people prefer if I make videos, but I think my body prefers if I ride my bike that evening. So there's these questions where I should probably make time in those very busy periods to do the sports that I sometimes neglect. Because now in the off season, I've got plenty of time to ride my bike. I'm doing so, and I'm getting better doing so. I've had my best Swift race I had my second best Swift race ever last week. So I'm near my best level. But that's because I'm spending the time in the off season to do so. If I did that the entire year, I would have been under 100 kgs already. But I've decided not to do that. So I'm sorry, heat training is irrelevant for a rider like me.
Well, Benji,
Nope.
it sounds like you need to listen to the episode that Spencer and I just recorded on Choose the Hard Way about how we have methods, even when we have 15 minutes to get something done, which, I mean, that's really the secret during those periods when
Yeah.
you have other things that are higher priorities is, what can you do if you really lower the bar on the amount of time you might need to spend to do it?
Wait. I don't know if you hear that, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do this segue, but are you hearing the people shout to the Tucson? What's a Tucson?
I was just going to say volume. I think we could solve your volume problem if you join Andrew and I at El Tour de Tucson. November 22nd is the race. I think Quinn Simmons did it last year.
I think he's going to do it again this year.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be Bradley Wiggins, George Hincapie. We're going to be lacing them up against these fellas, 100 and ladies, 170 kilometers ish. November 22nd. I think we are doing a live show November 21st at the El Tour de Tucson Expo.
Woo!
But Benji, you should fly out and join us for it. I think
Mate.
wasn't Patrick talking about a 5 watt per kilo FTP at some point? He might have to come out too.
Yeah, I'm not near 5 watt per kilo, my friend, but also in general, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to spend the money on a flight to the US at the moment.
I wouldn't be worried about the money on I would be worried about spending significant time in a, black site prison, but that's neither here nor
Yeah,
there.
might
Yeah,
get
people should be
deported again.
boycotting. Well, did you notice this? I felt like I was going crazy. Did Little Trek is an American team, which I
Mhm.
didn't quite realize. But a few months ago, I thought Little bought the team, but then they just announced that like Little the company, the
Yeah.
grocery company bought the team, and then now it's a German team. So American Cycling lost I think well, how many Americans are on that team? It's Quinn Simmons and one other rider maybe?
Is it bad that we don't know?
I thi I actually think it's secretly a blow to Belgian cycling because I heard they're moving the service course out of Belgium, which is
It's just Quinn
very
Simmons.
just Quincy's the only American rider on that team? That's
Yeah,
funny.
crazy.
Blow to American cycling that we lost that team.
I guess their deaf team exists, but I don't remember who was on there, to be honest. But Cole Kessler was on there. I think he was American.
Cole
Or
Kessler
is
was on there.
American. Don't
Yeah,
think
he
he's
might be.
changed nationality to German either.
That's what I would be going
Quinn
all
Simmons
I'd
is
be
now German, my friend.
well, remember Heinrich Hausler did that. He was Australian. No, he was he was German, then he was Australian. It's like,
Yeah,
I'd be switching back and forth. Whoever the
mate.
sponsor is,
Hausler
that's
was
the
such
line.
a fun rider.
I
Oh,
I I still think about that Sanremo. Can't believe he lost that.
the first rider I ever interviewed, Heinrich Hausler.
Whoa. I would have
When
been
mate, I'm
so
not sure
nervous.
this is ethical to explain, but let's just say that hypothetically, when I was younger, let's say 10 years ago, I I made websites, etc. That was what I was studying, and I made this like news website for cycling, and with a couple of friends, and we just contacted cyclists, pretending we're like an established traditional media, and
This
started interviewing Heinrich Hausler. That was the vibe. And then after a month, I gave up because I had other things to do than that.
well, you came full circle. Now
Yeah,
you're best friends with them. I heard a funny story about Heinrich
with
Hausler
Hausler.
that someone joined his team and he was their idol, and then they
Yeah,
were excited to meet him, and they met him, and he's kind of a prickly character, I guess, to put it.
wouldn't
But
shock me actually.
that's why we love him, though. He's just
Great hair.
you rarely see someone that talented that openly has almost a disdain for the sport, but then he actually does pretty well in it. But I've got to speaking of 15-minute workouts, I do it's 0 degrees Celsius outside, Benji, but me and my son are doing a no car challenge where we ride to school every day, no matter the weather. Can you
You're
imagine
riding
that?
to school.
Well, I'm riding my son to school, but
Okay.
he's going to be like in therapy 20 years from now. I'm like, I don't know why we couldn't take the car. It was too cold. But I've got to take off. Anything else you guys want to cover before we go?
Question. So I was a football player as a kid and was a fan of AC Milan in the day. So
Like football with your
soccer for
feet.
you guys.
Yeah. You missed your
Your
call and you could have
soccer,
been.
our football. I don't know how in depth you know that, considering it's not really in your area, I would say, unless you count the MLS, which I don't know. Um, I was massively into that as a kid, massively into Shevchenko, Inzaghi, all these players on the teams of AC Milan and that era of 2005 to 2010ish, I would say, of maybe even earlier when I was like 5 to 13 years old. Now I look back at that time of football and I'm thinking, okay, football fell off. Do you feel like we're going to have a moment at some point in our lives where we're going to look back at maybe the era for me of Vincenzo Nibali, Cadel Evans, stuff like that, and maybe in 20 years I'll look back at the years, the generation of the sport and be like, oh, I remember the good old days with Cadel Evans in the mud in the Montalcino against Alexander Vinokurov. Do you think we're going to have that at some point?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I know that era of AC Milan very well that you're describing. And because you would say football now, it's been optimized to a point where like everyone's way better than they used to be individually,
Yeah.
but it's maybe less compelling because everyone's so good and it's so professionalized. And I mean, do you think there's people right now who are like, man, I don't like this Tadej guy. He's kind of boring. I miss Vino and
Yeah, of course there's
Cadell.
people like that.
Yeah. But you know what I'm worried about though? What are we doing in 10 years, Benji? We're probably sitting around saying these guys, they don't know what it was like back in with Van der Poel, Pogacar. Like, what's this next wave going to be like? I'm slightly concerned because I don't want to go back to the the 2010s. That was not my favorite part of professional
Are
cycling.
we complaining too much? Because like right now we have the witnessing greatness phase of the sport, I'd say, which is Mathieu van der Poel, Remco Evenepoel, Tadej Pogacar. If they're solo in a monument, and the monument is like Lombardia, Paris-Roubaix, or LBL, then likely if Remco's alone, then he ends up riding away on La Redoute and wins the race. If Pogacar's there alone, or even if Remco's there, Pogacar rides away on La Redoute and wins the race. Lombardia, Pogacar's there, he wins the race by riding away on whatever climb there is 30 kilometers to go, because they switch the route every year. If Van der Poel is at Roubaix, on paper, if Pogacar's not there, then he just rides off and wins the race usually now. But with Pogacar, there's like this element of like you never know that he can follow. My Grand Tours, Tadej Pogacar wins comfortably at the moment in the last years of Tour de France. He's really stepped up in terms of watts compared to 2 years ago. Like it's 10% better than 2023 Tour de France. His level on the bike.
I don't want to speak out of school, but he changed coaches, and I think it helped. I think it was the right move. Yeah.
I think it was the right move too, based on the results.
I don't know. It's doing pretty good. But Benji, what was the worst Grand Tour of the year this year?
The Vuelta?
The Vuelta, by far. And the one he wasn't at, and a sick Jonas.
Yeah, but the one he wasn't at and a sick Jonas, but just in general, it was decapitated by the ongoing protests, etc. Whether I have my personal views on the place of IPT within the sport, but that's not the topic here at hand. We are discussing the actual entertainment value of that race, and there you would say that there were certain stages decapitated. Now, I don't care at all whether stage 21 is ridden or not. I will be honest about that. Procession stages, I don't care. If that was a mountain stage, we'd be like, oh, that's a bit sad. But
I'm the same way. I was kind of like secretly,
I was happy I had a day off.
Excited about that. Yeah, it's like, oh, this is the future. We don't have to do these anymore.
But on like a serious note, it depends on the ride. The Giro, Pogacar's also not there. That was a really good race. The Giro d'Italia. So it's like,
yeah, that's true.
Just because,
well, it did
the
have
fault is not
Pogacar
because of
Jr.
Pogacar either. It's not Pogacar's fault that he's so good. So it's not that Pogacar needs to change anything. He's doing what he's being paid for. He's doing what he should do, which is trying to win every race he rides. On the opposite end, it is a fact that the data shows that monuments are watched less if a rider before the race starts is the favorite and then rides away with 50 kilometers to go and you know that he's going to win, then less people put their TV on. That's the reality of the situation.
Are the courses too hard?
I'm not sure that we're going to continue to have this problem, and I think it's an extremely high-quality problem that we're witnessing this era of greatness in cycling. And if we just look back,
better? Was Skytrain
Froome was not better. It wasn't as beautiful to ride. But just look at Jonas and look at Remco. These riders are always one moment away from their career completely changing, and I think what people are doing with Pog, and I really struggled this year with the criticisms of professional cycling becoming boring because we're getting to witness the greatest generation of riders to have ever lived with like the highest level of human performance. Yeah, Christopher Blevins, phenomenal rider.
Like, I saw the guy in jeans riding a wheelie through a rock garden. That's not easy, folks.
Yeah, not bad. And I would just say that I think the greatest days of cycling are ahead of us. I think that there are legends to come. And I think that what I would hope to see is a bit more of that Unibet Rockets approach. Benji, to your point, that I think that professional cycling is always going to benefit from better storytelling that helps us know these athletes better. Although I think we've also discovered that not every athlete is necessarily a dynamic entertainer. That's not what they're great at. But I think that is what's interesting about Pog is the more the public has come to know
Yeah.
him, that he's a pretty compelling character. He rides a unicycle. I will say I didn't really enjoy.
That's the go-to moment. He's riding a
Yeah,
unicycle.
yeah. I didn't really enjoy emo Pog or sad Pog. So I hope we've seen the end of that. Like, I don't want to see frowny face, young, lean
Frowny
Pog
face
anymore.
Pog.
Yeah. Like, we need happy Pog back because he's the most interesting. And
Yeah.
finally, I would say, when it comes to characters, I don't know that we're ever going to top Vino. I mean, Spencer and I talk about Vinokourov stories quite a bit here on Beyond the Peloton. They are the things of legends. They'll be singing songs of songs for epochs to come
He is
about
a
Vino.
big. I watched the man eat a piece of pizza. I was just violating his privacy. Just like, wow, look at Vino eat a pizza. I mean, he is like such a big personality. You know, and like I know the biggest personalities from that era, and I'm still like in awe
Yeah.
of Vino. I'm just like, oh, Vino Kurov. Look at that guy. He was attacking Jan Oric when he was on his own team. Oh my God. He maybe I don't even know if we should. We'll just stop there. We'll stop there about the Vino talk. I don't want Vino after me, but it was great having you, Benji. I do think.
Thank you.
I don't know. Now you guys have me thinking about. I do think about wow, like not even like he's still racing. He's still fantastic. He won the two biggest set pieces of the Giro and the Tour. But you do have. It's like you get injuries, and then you're not quite as dominant. I do think that's how the Pogacar domination will end.
And
like it's just rare to have a clean run.
I do dislike the idea that Wout van Aert is not really allowed to fail right now. Like, imagine if he had not won that Giro or Tour de France stage, people would be shitting on him on social media. I'm sorry, but he's also at a point where it would not be a crime if his career is going downhill. Like, there is coming an end at some point for all these riders, which is fine. That's fine. And if there's a year that they roar back up, then I will support that. But I think at the end of the day, the conclusion that I've come to this year is that I've had moments where I was like, okay, that Pogacar victory, I felt like turning off my TV at 40 kilometers to go, just because I'm a fan of intense close racing like Paris-Roubaix 2016. And I have the same feeling not just with Pogacar, but with Remco's LBL victories or with MVP's Roubaix victory last year. But I think the conclusion I made in my head is, well, if I personally am not the biggest fan of dominant victories like that, then I'll watch a 1.1 race because there's interesting stories in those small races in the sport as well. Those might not bring people to the sport, and that's a different discussion. But I will find my enjoyment in that. So there's always something in the sport of cycling that I will enjoy regardless of what's happening at the top.
Tulsa tough.
Tulsa tough. Where you're going to be there doing that 1,500 watt sprint. It is funny. We talk about riders falling off. Simon Yates, 33, probably just had the best season of his career. Wins the Giro, wins the Tour stage, easy peasy, goes straight to Ibiza to do unspeakable things that will just be, the grandness of them will be spoken about. The specifics we'll never know. And that's the way it should be, Simon. But thank you, Benji. I actually will see you soon in person, but it was great having you on here. And
I'm canceling my ticket as we speak.
Your $700 train ticket to London from Oxford.
That's how it works here.
Yeah, it's like so expensive. But it was
at
great
least
to
we
have
have
you.
trains in the UK.
That's a good point. That is a checkmate right there. We get to pay. Andrew, you drove on this road like to the airport in Denver where you're like,
Oh yeah,
I'm driving to the airport. Then you get a bill. You're like, it was $40. Like, what just happened?
Just to drive on a road or like a
It's
toll
nuts.
thing.
Yeah, it's like a toll road. It is a nice road, but it is quite expensive.
yeah. There's a road for commoners in Boulder, and then there's the toll road. So
I support the
you
commoners.
have to pay.
Yeah, you got to pay because the other road not so great. But
Well,
we'll
the
talk to
other
you next.
road takes twice as long, so that's why you're paying.
And you go through like, in the Matrix where they're like, the humans are batteries. And like, that's what that area of town looks like when you drive through it. But great to have you, Benji, and we'll talk soon.